Hello. Wow, that actually works. Okay, I guess it's time to get started. I'm Lennart Poettering. I'm, I guess, not unknown in the open source community by now. I'll today be talking about pushing big changes. This is not purely a technical talk, but more one of those softer topics. And I wanted to do this talk primarily because I have been pushing big changes in the free software community in the past years, and I think I had to a certain degree, success was that where other people did not have, and I and the guys I was doing this with, we always wondered how did it actually happen that we managed to push through something that other people didn't manage to push through. Why did it work for us and not for the others? More specifically, it's like with systemd, of course, systemd, which is nowadays like the core of many big distributions and everything. It's an init system, but it wasn't the first init system. It wasn't the first reinvention of System 5 init on the planet. So why did we manage to push it through and get it adopted in the commercial distributions and everything? And why didn't other people do that? And similar, like my previous projects, like Pulse Audio, for example. Pulse Audio was not the first sound server that has been created. And it certainly, yeah, the reason is, how did it happen that Pulse Audio did get adopted in the various distributions and the other projects did not? And similar with the other big project I had before that, which is the Avahi ZeroConf suite, where, yeah, it was written basically against a competing implementation called Howl, and ultimately Avahi did survive, and it's still being used in all the distributions. So, I mean, I can only notice that we had this the success, and we always kept wondering, so how did we make that actually happen? And yeah, we looked back at what we did, and in this talk I want to cover a couple of the reasons why we ourselves at least believe that we managed to push this through. Basically, you could summarize my entire talk in 2 slides, and we'll come to those. But before we come to those slides, I'll hope to say a lot of other things first that are hopefully interesting too. My intention with this, of course, is I think the Linux ecosystem is the one that should win in the long run. And our competitors, like Windows, like macOS, like everything else, like Android and these things, they certainly thrive. And they move much faster than we do in many, many areas. And I think to keep up with them and to make Linux the winning platform and to win the last bastions where Linux has not, like classic Linux has not won yet, I think yeah, we need to speed up development. We need to do further bigger changes and get all the way. Now, many people are afraid of making these big changes or making change at all. In this talk, I really hope that I can take this away from you a little bit, like having this fear of moving too far outside of how traditionally things have worked, and deal with the backlash you have to deal with that. Anyway, so I hope this kind of explains a little bit why I'm doing this talk and a little bit of background, why we came to the conclusions we came to, and how this could be relevant for you. I think it could be relevant for any open source engineer. Yeah. So yeah, big changes. What do you actually mean by these big changes? And why do I want to make those changes? Of course, so I'll always focus on the most recent project of mine of systemd, where we basically we took everything the distributions are built out of the equation and replaced it by something new. And we did that, and of course, if you do something on a major scale like that, you really need to know why you're doing that. Why are you doing this big change? And in a way, I mean, this has so many impacts. Like, we obsoleted much of the thing people know, because I mean, there are lots and lots of Unix administrators, lots of Linux administrators who know their way around a System 5 init systems. So, and we come along, and we think, oh my God, we think we can do it better, and let's push this in all the distributions. And of course, that's kind of a dickish move, because the result is that everything people learned suddenly becomes they need to update to something different. And yeah, so the big question is, how do we dare to do that? Why do we think that doing these new things is the right thing? Now, the simple solution to that is that we are kind of like, we actually believe in the stuff we're doing. We actually believe it's a better thing to do. We believe it's the technically right thing to do. And without having that belief, I think it's never appropriate to make any technical changes of that scale, ever. You really, really need to know that what you're doing is actually worth it. And it's not worth it, and you don't do that for political reasons, and you don't do that stuff for financial reasons, or you do it for any other reasons. I think the only reason for making those technical changes that's really valid is the one you actually can believe in, because it's technically the right thing to do. So yeah, to know that it's technically the right thing to do, you definitely have to do your homework first. If you make a big change, and you didn't look around and looked around if maybe there are already solutions to the problems you try to solve, then there's no reason to make the big change. So yeah, before you do any big change, and before you dare to push it to do the move to get it through the communities, you really need to do your homework. You need to study what else exists, and you need to acknowledge if other stuff is good, and you have to take inspiration of it. And if you don't do that, you probably shouldn't do the big change at all. In the specific systemd case, for example, we looked very closely on the offerings that Solaris has with SMF in this area, that Apple has with LaunchD in this area, even what Windows has in this area. And we analyzed it in detail. We looked at it like what's the cool stuff about it? And of course, the question is, maybe we can use the stuff unmodified that they did. If something implements a good idea, and the code is sane, there's no reason at all doing something new. We could just take what they did. Of course, we came to the decision ultimately to do something new with systemd, but we drove a lot of inspiration of it, especially from the macOS design. And I think if you look at the prior attempts to establish a new init system on Linux, they seldom did this kind of homework, because nobody looked at that closely into LaunchD and got the ideas like this, the crucial idea of socket activation. I'm not going to go into technical details what that actually means, but suffice to say, socket activation is a wonderful thing. It's a really good invention that the Apple engineers did there, and it's an invention that actually deserves adoption on Linux as well. So we looked at all of this and came to the conclusion. Anyway, to put this together, you really need to do your homework. Before you try to make a big change, before you try to get people to adopt this stuff, you need to know what others have been doing in this area. If you solve something, and like if you try to make a big change in how Linux works and how the ecosystem works, then you need to find the right middle ground for what you're doing. You need to be specific but not too specific, and you need to be generic but not too generic. By that I mean is, I think it's a matter of taste, I guess, in many ways. If you start something new like we did with systemd, people frequently end up making the stuff too generic. They look at all the use cases and try to make something that works for all use cases. Or they try to make it too specific. They know their own use case, and they try to design something for that specific use case. To make the big change in the entire open source platform, you need something that finds right amount of being generic and being specific, meaning that it covers enough ground to be relevant to most people, and so that they're willing to consider your stuff and adopting it as a default, but still being specific enough to not be this gigantic fluff that nobody knows what it is and that can do everything. I think in many ways people probably disagree with exactly what we picked there for systemd, like this point between generic and specific, where we set our mark. A lot of people think we are way too generic. Some people think we're way too specific. Yeah, it's a difficult thing. What really matters is that you yourself, if you try to make the generic try to establish a project as the new big thing, you really need to know yourself where you actually want to go. So this is another thing. Like you see so many projects that come up in the free software world that try to revolutionize things. Another matter of taste in what you're doing and how you can convince people or not is by using the right technologies. So, for example, with systemd, we picked dbus as a technology. Because we thought, like dbus, I'm not sure if you guys all know this, is basically an IPC system, how local services can talk to each other. This is a decision that we picked dbus that is actually very controversial. A lot of people still don't think that dbus has anything, any right for existence on the server. I completely disagree with that point of view, of course, otherwise we wouldn't have done that. But the thing is, you need to look at the existing technologies, and of course if you try to establish something new, you shouldn't establish something that is entirely new and that does not reuse existing technology. But you really need to figure out which software, which other technology do you rely on and which you don't. And again, it's a matter of taste in that area, like what you rely on and what you don't rely on. We said our taste is basically to go for dbus, and they have other attempts to establish different IPC systems. For example, something web-oriented, like HTTP and things like that for local communication, or something XML-based, like XML-RPC and these kind of things. Now, it turns out, again, it's a matter of taste. You really need to figure out what is the technology you should base your stuff on, and what is the technology you should not base your stuff on. Because that's what people actually look at. Like, if they want to adopt your project or not, they will see if the technology you base your stuff on is actually kind of sane. It's kind of accepted, it's tested, and these kind of things. And if you use otherworldly technology, meaning also including otherworldly programming languages, then you severely make it difficult for your stuff to be accepted all around the community. Here's an example, like programming languages, for example. There are a lot of attempts to write system-level stuff in weird languages, where weird languages basically means something that is not C. So if you make a big change and you write your stuff in OCaml or something like that, you probably already lost right before you started. Because nobody, it's not how you win the hearts of the system developers. Because they don't speak OCaml, and they probably think your taste for weird languages kind of suggests that you also have a weird taste in other things, and then maybe it shouldn't be the core of the operating system. So basically what I'm saying is if you want to make big changes, then do them in a way that actually people can review them, can understand them, can follow the user decisions, and yeah, it's a big question of taste. Honestly, I think taste in general is probably something that should be much more focused on if you're a developer, because yeah, it's a matter of, I mean, of course, I have a different taste than other people have, but at least I do acknowledge that there is taste or something like that in developing and how you do stuff. Yeah, I don't know. The thing is, I'm telling you all of these things about taste and about finding the right limit. Of course, we think we found the right place between specific and generic, and the right place and using the right technologies and these kind of things. Of course, people will always disagree with you in that. I mean, I have my opinion, other people have other opinions. What matters most, of course, is that you yourself are confident enough, and that you yourself are realistic enough to understand how probably the majority of important people thinks in these areas before you can push them through. By the way, if anybody has questions at any point during my talk, I really would like to have this more interactive than just me talking and you guys listening. So if you have any questions, just show up, and I think we might even have a microphone. So yeah, interrupt me. I love to be interrupted. Anyway, so people hate change. This is something to understand. If you make a big change in the free software ecosystem, basically, people will hate you for that. There's no way around it. Whatever you do, if you change something, people hate it. Not all people hate it, and that's what you need to focus on, but there will always be people who really hate it for you. As it turns out, I mean, a lot of people do use computers not because they want to use computers, but because they need to solve a problem. And if they solve the problem once, they probably want to continue to solve it the same way forever, because they're not interested in the computer part of it. They're interested in the solution part of it. Now, if you change things, they will hate you. There's no way around it, because basically it means for them they have to relearn things. They have to change their own stuff and in response to what you did upstream. And they don't want to do that, because they just want to get home to their kids and not care about actually writing new software or updating their own software. So whatever you do, they will hate it. And you have to learn to deal with that. What I always find interesting is this kind of hate for change in the IT world, because everybody knows there's probably no technology, no area of the economy which is as fast as the IT economy is. I mean, in the product cycles and in technology are much faster than any other kind of industry, and yeah, in the last 40 years, the computers have developed at a speed that has the world never seen before, and most people will probably acknowledge that fact. But still, there are a lot of people in the IT world that actually hate change in every possible way. People sometimes are a little bit schizophrenic about hating change, because many people actually say, I love change in some specific areas. For example, if I'm a web developer, I probably love it if my web tool of choice, let's say Ruby for Rails, gets a new release out and gets these and these and these new features. I totally love that, even if it breaks other things, because it's the stuff that I'm interested in. I love it. But then again, if something changes in the other layers of the stack, I probably hate it, because I suddenly have to deal with new package manager or something like that. And I never wanted to deal with package managers, so why did the fact that they changed that? I'm just a Ruby for Rails guy. But of course, the world isn't like that. People cannot make the choice that only their specific area of interest is updated and everything else stays the same. Anyway, so people hate change, even in the IT world, even though it changes fast and it has to. People, in many ways, are still stuck in the 70s. Like, for example, in the Linux world, we hear that very frequently. Like, a lot of people, basically, every second word of what they say and comment on Slashdot or LWN is Unix. Because Unix is a very influential design in computer technology. It has been basically invented in the 70s, and since then, it barely changed at all in its basic concepts. And whenever somebody tries to change something on the basic Linux system, people will judge it by how much Unix is in it. That's, of course, weird. I mean, Unix got the designs in the 1970s, and since the 70s, computers changed substantially. I mean, my phone is now this thin thing, and it runs Unix in a way, and I mean, it has nothing to do with the mainframes that Unix was designed on. So, but anyway, the 70s are still basically in the heads of everybody, because everybody judges things by how Unix something is. I mean, if you acknowledge that people hate change so much, then you have to think back about, Jesus, they still care about 40 years old technology. Is that bad, actually? I mean, on one way it is, because it's kind of weird that people still focus on the technologies from the 70s. And then again, you could also say about Unix that it's probably a pretty good design if it survived 40 years. And there's definitely truth to that. In fact, I mean, it's not that change was necessarily good in itself. It never is. And it also doesn't mean that always keeping compatibility at any possible level also is a good thing. But yeah, I think what you have to realize is if you change something, you probably have good reasons for it, but you should never forget that compatibility matters. So whatever you do new, you have to provide a way for people to adopt your stuff slowly and gradually instead of abruptly. For systemd specifically, that meant for us, whatever we do with systemd, we need to make sure that people still can run system5init scripts and all the classic stuff on systemd and in most areas. And it actually does matter for us, compatibility in that area. So I don't know. What you basically take away, or should take away from this is people hate change. And so people will hate you for whatever big change you push. But on the other hand, while they might frequently have not much point in doing that, sometimes they do, because you should not forget why they are hating this, because it means work for people. So you should help them minimize that work. So here's another thing, which is a bit of a problematic thing. If you do a big change in the Linux ecosystem, then a part of it is that you actually need to know people. You cannot do changes like we did, for example, with systemd without actually talking to the relevant people to get them on your side to convince them. This is of course never really that visible if you just follow things in /LWN, and people don't tend to talk about that, but it is definitely there. It's like if you want to push something, you need to convince some people individually, because you need to make sure that they are not the ones who go and loudly argue against you or for you. And I mean, you want them to argue for you, if at all, but never against you. So it does matter to know people and have, if you try to make a big push, to just at least have told them a little bit in advance. So you do need connections. I mean, probably in the real world, like in politics and stuff like that, you need connections too. And it's kind of disgusting that you need connections. I mean, because obviously if we are computer scientists, we probably only care about the technically right solutions, we always believe. And it's kind of sad that there's so much personal things in that. However, I don't know, the good thing about it is that unlike in most other areas, getting those connections is actually really easy. They matter, and you can get them. For example, you go to conferences like this one, because a lot of people who are more involved in the community hang around here. And you can talk to them, and you can convince them that that's the right thing that you want to do. And that's basically what we did with systemd as well. We went to a shitload of conferences. We talked to a lot of people, and we tried to figure out who's probably going to support us in this and who's probably not. It's sometimes a little bit sad that so much politics is involved, but I guess the free software community is a community, and if it's a community of people, then you need those politics, unfortunately. But I still believe that getting those politics right is probably easier than in any other community, because people tend to be rational. They not necessarily are always rational. There are enough people who are completely irrational about technical stuff, and that's sad. But yeah. But what to take away from this is also, sure, you need to know some people, but it also means you don't have to care for every single one of them. For example, I don't know, with systemd, there are a lot of loud haters of systemd, for example. And when we realized we would never convince them, then we just have to accept that. And as long as we convince everybody else, or not necessarily everybody else, but a lot of other people, we managed to push that through anyway. To focus a little bit more on the change haters and the haters in general, the internet is full of haters. People, whatever you do, people will hate you. People will hate you if you do one step on the internet and become and post something on a blog story. It's very likely people will write something on your blog and on the comment section and say you suck or something like that. And that's not specific to the free software community or anything. We have a lot of crazy people in the free software community, of course, and you will get a lot of hate. But for example, very recently, some guy posted, I don't know his name, unfortunately, but posted a blog story. It was a very different perspective. He was a game designer and designed a game. I'm sure some people probably read that blog story because it was linked all across Google Plus and things like that. But anyway, he gave it the very same thing from the game developers community, which is very different from ours because it's not that open and because it's much more commercial. But he also pointed out the internet is just full of haters. And it is. Yeah. The thing is, you need to deal with that hate. It is really unfortunate how much people can hate you. We did with systemd, we did changes, we brought up a lot of people against us. And yeah, I mean, from time to time I do get death threats and things like that. And you always think like, what the fuck, this is a free software community and we should all be friends and things like that. And it's sometimes unbelievable what kind of shit you get on the internet. The thing is though, you have to simply accept that. Even if they tell you that you should be shot or something like that, you have to deal with that and just ignore it. It's like, I think this is actually one of the key things to take away from here. If you ever want to do a big change in the community, you really need to learn dealing with the hate you will get for it. And I think in many cases, people are not ready for that. Like, people are not ready for dealing with the kind of shit they get. And for some weird reason, I was ready for being hated that much, and it never caused me to lose interest in what I'm doing. So, yeah, you need to develop a thick skin, a very thick skin. Because, yeah, there's going to be a ton of flame wars if you change something, and you need to deal with them. This is one of the key things. I mean, I especially find this really interesting, like if you go to I mean, free software traditionally was something, or computing in general, that was dominated by Western countries, like Europeans and Americans. And I guess in Europe and America, the general tone of conversation is probably a little bit harsher than in some other communities. Especially, like, if you look at Japan, for example, where people tend to be very, very friendly and formal to each other, and they're just not used to the way how the free software communities sometimes communicate. So, I mean, in those societies, it's often an issue of losing your face and things like that. That you do not insult people like that, like we tend to do in the free software community. So, of course, that makes it much harder for people from these societies to take part in the free software world, because yeah, if you really want to make a big change and you're being hated and people start flame wars about you and stuff like that, and you're not dealt previously with this thing that people will hate you, and you have a serious problem, you probably stop doing what you're doing. So yeah, this is absolutely key. Haters gonna hate whatever you do, and you just have to filter it. It's about getting the right filter of things that you can ignore and things you shouldn't ignore. Yeah, here's the next thing. If you make a big change, you need to talk about it. You cannot just sit in your cubicle, do the technical stuff you want to do, and expect that people will use it. And we'll put it in the standard Linux stack, and it's going to be there, and everybody's going to use it. I mean, it might happen, but it actually never really happens. With systemd, it would never have worked. So you have to talk about it. Talking about it means going to conferences, going to tons of conferences. By going to conferences, you reach the other developers. By going to conferences, you reach the users who could be the first adopters for your stuff. By doing conferences, you might get your stuff written up by some of the various press that we have in the free software community. So there's no way around that. If you want to make a big change, you need to make people understand it. And it's not sufficient posting on your blog. Of course, you need to post it on your blog, but you also need to kind of convince the people by just telling people how that is. So yeah, there's no way around it. You have to talk at conferences. That's why I'm here, by the way. And you need to be prepared if you do those talks, really, really well prepared, because you basically need to think how people will react to what you say. And then after you figured out how they probably will react, you need to figure out what your answers are going to be. That's basically a basic rule of how you should argument anyway, and in any kind of argument, is you need to know what people are going to say, so that you have all the answers ready for things. For a long time, when I did presentations, I always had a huge stack of presentations. Like I generally tend to do that still. I have a huge stack of slides actually in my presentations, where I never intend to actually show them all in my talk, but I could, at any time, if somebody has a question, pull out the right slide on my deck and show them the answer to the thing. This, of course, is an obvious use case of having so many slides, but actually what I really did that for is because I myself wanted to know what the answers to these questions are if people ask. So I prepared myself with preparing much more slides than I actually needed. Just to if somebody asks me a question, that I can give a good answer, a convincing answer, just like that, without having to think about it for long. So, yeah, you need to talk about that. You need to talk to technical people, like to developers if you want to develop and want to make a change, but also to everybody else. And that, of course, you need to have the better arguments than everybody else. If you ever want to win a technical argument, it's not sufficient to just being there. You also need to be convincing. Of course, I can put the button on a slide and pretend that I always did this. And yeah, it's of course, you will always fail doing this. I always failed, and everybody fails because we're all humans. But at least you should try to prepare yourself for it. So yeah. The other thing, if you make a big change, as already mentioned, you cannot be this single guy in his cubicle doing the changes and expect that people will adopt it. You absolutely rely on the community. And I mean, it's kind of stupid going to a free software conference where everybody knows that the community matters anyway. But people really should not underestimate that how important the community is. I sometimes see that in the commercial world as well, and even in companies that should know that better. They sometimes see the community just as a bunch of people who test things for them. Honestly, I think that's a completely bullshit idea. You need to have a community of people who actually develop your stuff with you, who do testing for you, but that's only one facet of it, and who you can talk to reflect your ideas, which is actually one of the most important things. So to get a good community, I mean, there are community managers who deal with it all day. I'm not really community managers, but I think I learned a couple of things about it. I'm mostly, of course, I'm a developer, so my community focus is, of course, getting community of developers. There's much more in a community than just developers. There are documenters, and there's just users and testers and whatnot. But yeah, if you want to have a community of people, then you need to make it easy for people to actually contribute stuff. This is, I mean, you could list a ton of things how you make the community friendly to you, but I just listed like some of the most superficial things there. If you use Git, then people can actually just go and hack, because nowadays Git is the one thing that everybody knows if he's a hacker, and everything else is bullshit. So if you use some exotic version control system, then yeah, good luck with that. It's much more difficult for people to contribute because they don't know that exotic thing. I guess it ties into what I earlier said about not picking weird programming languages if you want to push big changes into the stack, because people don't speak those languages and they're annoyed by them. The same thing is about using version control. Nobody cares about version control. You should just use Git, because if you use something else, then you kind of expect people to learn something before they can get started hacking on your project. The other thing is use the same license. And by license, I not only mean that you should pick GPL or LGPL or something boring that everybody else uses, but you should also not do copyright assignment and these kind of bullshit things which basically make it really difficult for community members to contribute. Yeah, we need to be nice to your community so that I mean, by getting the community people involved, you basically gain a lot of force in pushing your ideas. Because if you convince your community, then the community will go and convince other people for you. And that's really good. So you need to take care of your community. You need to be friendly with them. You need to organize an IRC channel where you always hang around, and maybe organize a hackfest or something. And you need to make sure that they're not second-class citizens, but they're actually just first-class citizens like yourself. In Systemd, for example, we always try to underline that and show them the respect by giving a lot of people the same rights to Systemd as we ourselves have. I think we nowadays have like 18 or so committers to Systemd, and sure, I still end up doing most of the work together with Kai, but ultimately, I mean, we have people from the Debian camp with commit access. We have people from Arch Linux with commit access. We have a couple of Red Hat people, of course, with commit access. But I think the goal is really to clarify that what you want to do is not this private thing that you want to do, but you really want to have it accepted by everybody. And you don't want to be the one who owns it, but you want to give it back to everybody. Because, I mean, doing that will make it much more likely that people will adopt your stuff across the board, because they kind of get the feeling that this is not this thing that is just driven by somebody to push his goals, but it's actually something that is driven by a lot of people to focus their individual goals, which, of course, might hopefully reflect what everybody else wants to. So, yeah, community really, really matters if you want to convince people across the board. Of course, it's easy to misunderstand community. So something to realize is delegation won't work. By delegation, I mean that you tell somebody to implement something. That never happens. It's like, the community doesn't work like that. The community is that people scratch their own itches and they send you patches for the issues they have. They won't send you patches for the issues you have. So in systemd, for example, we have this long to-do list of things we need to do, and we work on that. But it would be completely weird expecting that people from the community just come up, look at the to-do list, and send me a patch for that. That does happen every other year or so. But in general, what people work on is stuff that they need to have fixed. And you have to know that and accept that, and it's awesome. Because, yeah, your own agenda might be your own agenda, but it's not the only agenda that matters. It's the agenda of the community that matters. And, yeah, if you want to have your stuff accepted by everybody, you probably should accept that as well. It doesn't mean that you have to merge everything that the community sends you, but it at least kind of reflects on the general direction to which the thing is pushed is not only yours, but by the community. Here's another thing. This is another one of the things that I actually think are absolutely key if you want to have success with making big changes in the Linux ecosystem. It's you need persistence. You need to stick to your ideas through a lot of fights and everything else, and all the pressure and all the politics that comes. I think a lot of attempts like pushing init systems and things like that previously failed because the guys behind it didn't have the persistence to keep to it over the years. And I guess I was lucky that I'm just that way, that I do stick to my shit and just continue pushing. But it's hard to be like that. I mean, people are different, and some people start something with awesome ideas and really, really good ideas, but never have the persistency to continue pushing for that for enough time to people to adopt it. But yeah, I don't know. For systemd specifically, it's like 2.5 years on, and we still love hacking on that stuff, and we still love our code base, and we still, when I wake up, I'm looking forward to hacking on systemd, because I don't know, I apparently do have this persistency, and whatever you do, you need to be prepared to work on your stuff for years before people will adopt it across the board. So yeah, that's absolutely key. And you see, if you look around, and you see numerous projects that have been started, and then people lost interest in it. They died. But yeah, if you want to have something successful, there's no way around in dealing with the fact that you need to stick to it. Of course, on the other hand, you shouldn't stick to something that is a dead horse. Like, I mean, sometimes solutions come around that are better than yours. It happens to everybody. It happens to me too. Like, there's certain projects that I started that never ended up being successful because other solutions were just better than I am. Of course, this is really difficult actually for some people, because they created their own little baby project, and it was their baby, and then they never accept that other projects might have surpassed theirs. So yeah, you need to stick to your stuff and continue doing it, even if people hate you and everything. But you have to be able to let go sometimes and just admit that you didn't win. Of course, it's a question when exactly that point is, but yeah. Oops. Here's another thing. If you want to make a big change, you shouldn't expect that you are the only one working on this, and you have to have all the qualities for doing this kind of stuff. For example, I mean, as I already explained here, like if you're a hacker and you want to make those big changes in some area, you need to be able to talk about it. But then there's a thing that some people like to talk about these things, and some people do not like to stand in front of a room and talk about their stuff. So sometimes the way to deal with these kind of things, that you cannot have all the qualities you need, is just working together with other people. It's of course not that easy, because you first need to find people who are suitable for that, who have the same kind of focus and the same interests as you. But sometimes you find these things. For example, with systemd, I probably would never have been able to push that through and get it to the success that we have it without the support of Kai Sievers, who I worked with. Because I mean, he has a lot of things that I don't have. Like he's a kernel guy, so he has a lot of hooks from that direction of the ecosystem that I don't have. And if we didn't have that, then we wouldn't have succeeded with Systemy the way we have. So yeah, it's difficult, like finding the right people for doing something like that. But yeah, I mean, some free software developers like to see themselves in the light of being this lone ranger who does things, and people misunderstand him, but he does the things right and sad like that. If you do that, you will never have success. Or yeah, I mean, you might have if you're very, very lucky, but in general, you won't. So yeah, if you like some of those skills, then try to find somebody who has. And here's something that, I mean, people seldom talk about this, but especially, I mean, I work for Red Hat, and when we pushed through systemd, we of course had to deal with a lot of pressure from outside of the company and hate and people criticizing us for changing things and being idiots in general like that. It's actually, maybe it's not as bad as it is outside of the company, but inside of the company, we got the very same pressure. And I probably can't go into detail because it's all secret stuff, but you need to be prepared that the thing where you think you are at home probably isn't, you're not that much at home as you think you are. So, I mean, it's especially true for, I guess, for Red Hat, because like a lot of free software developers actually work for Red Hat. But you need to be prepared that whatever you do, you need to defend it in all the directions you can. And the same shit you hear on the internet about you being stupid, you will probably, at least if your company is big enough, also get from internally from your company. Then, of course, you'll lose many fights, and you will make a lot of mistakes. We did that as well. I mean, ultimately, if you look at the Systemd project nowadays, while we are, I guess, at least I like to see it that way, quite successful in that we managed to push it into Red Hat and SUSE and Arch Linux and Mandriva and Magaya and all these distributions, in a way, we did lose certain fights because we never managed to push it into Ubuntu. And the way it looks like, we will never be able to do that. And of course, our goal, and one of our main goals, was actually unification of the basic building blocks of the Linux operating system. And so you could say, with that goal, we definitely failed. But yeah, you have to accept that you will lose fights and you will make mistakes. And you can, yeah, I mean, we probably made a lot of mistakes, like pissing off Ubuntu the way we did. Maybe some of that is certainly their fault, but much of it is definitely our fault as well. Yeah, you will lose fight, you will miss mistakes, but that doesn't mean you should give up. You should need to if you want to make those big changes, push ahead and continue what you do so that you get what you want. And some of those fights will actually be important. I don't know. It's like if you look example for Systemd, how we tried to push it for the first time into Fedora. Like Fedora is like this distribution that probably always carries all big developments first. And so we, of course, tried to push Systemd into Fedora. And the first time we did that, we actually failed. It's like we did everything by the feature process and convinced the right people that it's the right thing to do. But ultimately, like a week before the release, or no, the beta or something, we had to revert it because people were too concerned about it. But we stuck with it, and in the next iteration, we pushed it in, and everything went smoothly. And yeah, it's like you will lose fights, and you have to figure out that even if you don't get what you want, you have to deal with that, and learn from it, and make it better, and get over it. So yeah, there's probably another aspect of this persistency that we need, that whatever you do, stick to it and try to make the best of it, and even if it upsets you for a while, you need to learn it. Even if you think that people probably were all wrong with what they did, there's a good chance that they actually aren't, and that you might be wrong. So you need to learn from that. So yeah, so you will also make mistakes. Try to not make them yourself. For example, I mean, I used to be very much involved in lots of flame wars around the project that I started. And I'm still am in many of them. But ultimately, I mean, as I grew older and got a little bit of more of experience, I think the thing is you can never win flame wars, really. It's like you can make a couple of points, but you have to understand that you will never win flame wars, because flame wars are flame wars, you can't win them. Yeah, I probably made a lot of mistakes. I guess, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit infamous of being this guy who breaks everybody's systems and does not care about it or something like that. It's actually not true to consider myself to be that, I think. I like to believe at least. But yeah, it's definitely my fault that I came into this position. But then again, yeah, I don't know. The best thing, if you make mistakes, then you have to accept them and try to deal with them and try not to make them much again. Of course, I'll probably never lose this thing that I'm this guy who just doesn't care about certain things, even if I do. But yeah. Anyway, this is everything I have so far. I think I got like 15 minutes left or something for discussion. Anyway, I hope this was interesting to you. Like gives you a little bit of background, like our thinking, like how we push these things like systemd through, and kind of explains why we did this a little bit, but primarily how we did it. If you have any change in the free software world, wherever that is, if it's building operating systems like we did or something else, I can only encourage you to try to make those changes, and maybe learn a thing or two from how we did this. So I wish you good luck with that. Definitely, I personally believe that it's a really good thing if we make Linux thrive and change and everything and see the future. So good luck, and yeah, we got 15 minutes. So if you have any questions about this, and I hope you do, there's at least a question. How do we do that with mics or something?
Okay. So you were mentioning that it's a good idea to learn from other projects that have done what you want to do, and especially from proprietary ones. Do you worry about infringing patents by mistake?
Patents?
Yes.
Ooh, well, I mean, I think it's a good idea for a developer not to care about patents at all. Don't read them. I mean, that's what your lawyers basically tell them. If you read patents or you're aware of any patents and you still implement something, then you're in a really bad legal situation. So I think as a free software or as any kind of developer, it's probably the only safe thing to do is never read patents, never think about patents. Well, except for the really obvious cases. I mean, of course, if you now implement MP3 or something like that, and you know in advance that it's totally patented and everything, you probably made a mistake. But for the stuff, I don't know, there's probably a lot of stuff that could be patented in systemd. I have no doubt about that. But I don't know. I probably shouldn't talk about patents that much anyway because I'm not legal and yeah. Anyway, but my personal thing is definitely never to read anything like that. Do I have to repeat the questions? Did you get? Okay, so the question was basically if when I started Pulse Audio, if I knew in advance that it would be this big controversial change, or if it just turned out to be a big change. So actually I knew it. I mean, it was kind of obvious. Like if you think a little bit about it, it's like we had the stack of Linux and the audio stack basically, and we had the kernel drivers, and then we had ALSA, and then we had the apps. And what we ended after Pulse Audio up with is we squeezed something into the stack in the middle, which is Pulse Audio. And that is quite a drastic change because you don't just replace one thing with another thing, but you just completely change the model of things because your stack looks very different now. So it was actually clear to me. And then it was actually clear to me that it would be really controversial. Of course, like the mistakes we made was basically, I mean, I don't like to blame myself for things, so of course everybody else's fault was that Pulse Audio had the rough ride in the beginning. In retrospect, I think we couldn't have done it any other way, I must say. The primary problems we had with Pulse Audio was basically just drivers, because the simple thing is that nobody makes money from audio in this entire world, except like Yamaha or something like that, and especially nobody makes money from Linux audio. So we had this general problem that there's not much manpower invested in fixing the drivers. And what we did with Pulse Audio is use sound card drivers in a way they haven't been used before. Like we based everything on the timing information of the drivers, and of course they didn't. I mean, they went all right because nobody used that before the way we did and relied on the accuracy of all these kind of things. So while everything always worked fine on my laptop, of course, because yeah, I was lucky to have a driver that worked like that. It didn't happen on a large number of other devices. So, and of course, Pulse Audio was a new thing that was squeezed in the stack. And as much as I can say, yeah, the drivers were problematic and not so much our code, yeah, the bad name stuck with Pulse Audio, not with the drivers. But I don't actually want to push any blame on the drivers, actually, and want to really clarify that, because the thing is, yeah, nobody did use that before that. And we could have sat down and fixed all the drivers first, but honestly, I don't think that would have scaled, because, I mean, I'm just one person. I can't sit down and fix all the drivers and things like that. It's like, because they are not, as mentioned, that much manpower in the audio world. So ultimately, the approach we try to go for is do it, and we knew that some drivers wouldn't be right, and then put kind of through that the pressure on people to fix them. And ultimately, it's kind of successful, I guess. Of course, we kind of solved all this on the back of the users a bit, because we kind of gave users something that was not necessarily ready for them. But I don't think it could have worked any other way. Nowadays, people use Pulse Audio like if somebody writes a driver, they tend to run Pulse Audio on it, and as long as Pulse Audio doesn't work on it, they know that the driver is not good. And to come into that position, nowadays, I don't think there are much problems with Pulse Audio. It works fine. All the drivers got fixed. But anyway, I hope this gives a little bit of a perspective. But yeah, we knew what we were doing. And we knew that, I mean, of course, I wasn't as old as I'm now, so I didn't expect that much hate. But I don't know. For some weird reason, I never was touched too much by that hate. I mean, as mentioned, I don't think we had really another way. So if we did it again, I would do it exactly the same way. And then, yeah, even if people would hate me again, I'm used to that now. I don't know. I think, given that we had nobody doing the work, and I mean, the thing is, like, you can test it on everything and then push it in, or you can push it in and having tested it through that. And honestly, I don't think you can ever test it on your own. It's what you want the community for. It's what I mentioned before. The community does really matter. And so in that case, I don't think we did anything wrong. I think it was done the right way. Maybe we could have done smaller things differently. But ultimately, we had to push it into the stack, because otherwise it wouldn't be tested. And we didn't have the manpower to do anything else. So yeah, I don't feel bad about what we did. No remorse on my side, sorry. Anyway, any further questions about this? So your question, let me repeat that. I hope I got it right. Is what about the perspective that nowadays, much more than 10 years ago, most of the contributions in this world in open source come from companies rather than individuals, and what that means for the big changes? Okay. So my perspective is, then the continuous question was, what does change in the regard that more open source projects are actually initiated by companies rather than personal people? My answer to that is, I didn't start Systemd because Red Hat wanted me to. I started Systemd because I wanted to do Systemd, and actually initially Red Hat was not very amused about that. I don't know. It's like whoever starts a free software project, I think what I showed there kind of matters for everyone who wants to make a big change. I don't know. I never worked really on a company-started open source project. I must admit, like most projects are just something individuals started that I know. I think, I mean, I personally believe that the problem with company open source projects is that it's much more difficult for companies to make the guys doing the work enthusiastic about it, because it's not they who started it, it's the company who started it. And that's a crucial problem. But if the company manages to pull that off, to make their guys enthusiastic about it, I don't think there's much of a difference to a classic user single person started open source project. But I mean, everything that I said about the changes, the enthusiasm is kind of key to what you do. Like if you're not enthusiastic about your stuff, then you kind of lost already. You shouldn't actually start with what you're doing. You need to believe in your stuff. There was another question somewhere there. You just repeat it. So the question was about contributors, how important contributors are to me personally, regarding do we want to care for every single feature and that somebody submits to the mailing list, or if we more focus on this big stuff that we do or something like that, right? I think one of the slides tried to make this point, like the community is everything. Without the community, because I have my own goals. I think that systemd should be this and this and this. Other people have different goals, and they tend to, like if they try to contribute to systemd, they probably align a little bit with mine, and that's awesome. But I absolutely think it's absolutely essential for any project to have the greatest possible respect for your contributors. So for me personally, this means I will actually really try to reply to every single mail that is posted on the mailing list, or at least somebody else, unless somebody else already gave a really good answer. And I'm not always capable of doing that because there's a lot of stuff going on there. But I really try hard to either merge the patches that people send us, or give a really good explanation why we don't. I mean, you shouldn't merge everything that people send you because, I mean, I mentioned this thing about taste, and sometimes it's too far away from what you think is right. But contributors, I mean, as mentioned, you should never expect that you can tell people to work on something. They will never do that because they will always only scratch their own itches. But yeah, do care for your contributors. Fuck, absolutely. And I think many projects don't get that right. Like especially company pushed projects that do not respect their contributors, but we actually do. I mean. Yeah, I mean, as people, you can even create a successful open source project if you do that, but then you probably need to have the scale of Google that you can actually do that. And of course, most of us don't. And I still think it's much less dickish move if you actually. I mean, we should always be nice to the guys in your community, and you should actually be nice to everybody. But so yeah, value your contributors absolutely. There's another question. That's a good question. So the question was regarding Upstart. Why did we start something new instead of improving Upstart, basically? It's a very good question. It's a very valid question. We asked, I mean, you know, that's one of the first slides I said doing your homework, and that of course included looking very closely at what Upstart does. So a little bit of a background on that. When we started systemd, like the idea of writing systemd was actually older. It was actually predated Upstart in a way. But then Upstart came along, and Kai and I, when we discussed this, kind of came to the conclusion Upstart is going to be the future. And it looked like that for a long time. Upstart is really good, really well written. There's no, I mean, you can find a lot of criticism about Upstart, no doubt, but the source code is perfect. It's like well documented, there's tests for everything, and it's even a good writing style. There's nothing to complain about that. The reason we wrote something new is basically when we looked around us, or when we looked at Upstart, we came to the conclusion that the design was fundamentally flawed. I think I did at this very conference like 2 years ago, something, or 3 years ago. I did talk about that specifically. Basically, we came to the conclusion that upstarts, in its very core, pulled everything up the wrong way. Because, I mean, in systemd is dependency-based and uses socket activation to parallelize boot up. What they did is do everything event-based. The event-based model that they did is much simpler than the dependency-based because they don't have to have a dependency resolver and these kind of things. But in our eyes, this was just a shortcut they took where they exported the problem set of figuring out the dependencies. Instead of solving them in the computer, they let the administrator and developer figure those things out. And we thought that was fundamentally the wrong way around. Because if you want to optimize things to boot up as little as possible in the shortest amount of time, you really should let the computer figure it out, because every single boot will be different. Because different hardware appears in different order and these kind of things. So, a long story short, we came to the conclusion that the design of Upstart was just fundamentally wrong. And then, if you look at the project, so was there any chance to turn it around? Like ripping out the core and changing the entire design, and we came to the conclusion that it's highly unrealistic that they would do that. Yeah, it's always a problem, especially, I mean, our goal with systemd was unification. And it's kind of weird then if you want to unify things and there are already 5 solutions in the market, creating a 6th one that's supposed to be the unified one. That's a completely bullshit idea. But then again, we looked at this thing and we came to the conclusion, fundamentally broken, like in the design, and not in the implementation and not in anything else, but in the design was broken. And that, I think, is the only valid reason if you want us to start something new, where we already have something. Okay. I hope that kind of explains it. But I guess my time is already really over. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope this was interesting, and I hope to see all your big changes in the free software community in the project. Thank you.